Hey, how's everybody doing? I know I haven't made a video in a long time, and this is going to be like any other video that y'all have seen from me because I'm usually posting stuff about the military and whatnot, but a lot of different things have happened in my life, and one of the most important things is me applying for a Master's of Business Administration. So a lot of different things have happened in my life. I separated from the military a few days ago, and I decided that after I got out of the military, I wanted to go see the world. And I thought, what better way to do that than if I want to get my master's degree anyway, my MBA, let me go study in Europe. And so me, as we usually are in the military, especially in the Marine Corps, I wanted to do the best of the best. And whenever I thought of the best colleges, I thought Oxford and Cambridge in England. And so that's who I applied to, just those two schools. And so this video I'm gonna go over, because I know a lot of other people are really interested in how do you get accepted into Oxford, what can you do to get accepted into Cambridge. I was fortunate enough to get accepted into both, and then at the end of the video I'm going to share my decision on where I decided to go. So without further ado, I'm going to go over the really four main parts, the stuff you have to do before GMAT, academic background, your work experience, stuff like that. That's going to build the basis for the second part, which is your application, how you actually do the application. The most important part's the interview, going over that interview and the different types of interview stuff and stuff that kind of surprised me that was different from my undergraduate degree in America to applying for a Master's of Business Administration in Europe. And then last, offer, getting those scholarships, and then finally, what decision I decided to make and my reasonings. Okay, so without further ado, let's jump into it. So before you get your MBA, you got to decide, why do I want an MBA? For many people, it's very different. Some people, they've been working in fields where MBAs dominate, whether that's consulting, financial management, or what have you. And then other people, such as myself, they want to get into those fields or really want to use an MBA in order to gather the skills they need in order to run a business or do something that's more diverse. Me personally, I worked in education before I joined the military, and I loved it. And one of my mentors in college, he had his MBA, and he was a very prominent figure in the university that I attended and taught at. So that really gave me the idea to get my MBA. The most important part, I don't care what anybody says, the most important part of your application process is the GMAT. And I can make another video about what I did personally to prep for the GMAT, but the GMAT is the test you need to take in order to apply for business school. You can take the GRE, and looking back, I think I probably would have rather taken the GRE because it would have gave me a little more flexibility. And Cambridge and Oxford, they accept both the GRE and the GMAT. I took the GMAT, I did pretty well on it, and it takes a lot of studying. And I'll make a video later on how I prep for the GMAT, but there are certain ways, certain things you can do in order to really make that GMAT process a little more easy. It's not going to be easy, it's the hardest part of what you do, and it's the most important part. It's definitely extremely important. For Cambridge and Oxford, the GMAT scores compared to like top 20 B schools in America are a little bit lower. I know at a place like Harvard or Stanford or Wharton, their average GMAT scores are like a 730 or so. At Cambridge and Oxford, it sits around that 690, 700. So as an American, if you want a top tier B school, but maybe your GMAT score is a little lower, it's just slightly lower than what's expected at a top 20 B school in America, Cambridge and Oxford give you that option, okay? But still, earning a 700 on a GMAT, 700 and above, that's pretty difficult and it takes a lot of work. Probably the most second most important thing is your academic experiences and also your work experiences, where you come from. Me personally, my undergraduate degree was in economics and religion. I went to a prominent university in North Carolina at Greensboro. Not the biggest school, definitely not that many alumni at top 20 business schools, and I don't know of any alumni that went to Oxford or Cambridge for their MBA. So if you're going to an undergraduate school and you're kind of concerned about that, I was a little concerned about that, my academic background, but it turns out it didn't really matter. As long as you have the grades and the extracurricular experiences and the work experiences that are going to boost that up. So that was a part of my application that was a little weak, that I was a little worried about, was where I went for my undergraduate school. My work experiences, y'all know, I'm a legal officer in the United States Marine Corps. I did a lot of stuff in the Marine Corps, had pretty good success at my job, and having that military background definitely helped me. because it was something unique. And whenever I went into my interview questions, and especially my application, I really touched on that, what I did working in law, being airborne certified as a Marine Corps officer. These were cool little pieces that they liked in my application, and it definitely helped me, especially when it comes to scholarships. Probably the next most important thing is your extracurriculars. What are you doing outside of work, and what are you doing whenever you get home that's still developing yourself? Are you volunteering? Do you have things on the side that you do? For example, me, I officiated sports all throughout North Carolina, all throughout the East Coast as an NCAA football, baseball, and basketball official. And so I shared those things, and I really connected that to how it taught me, not only prepared me for my MBA, but also prepared me to be a Marine Corps officer. And you connect that stuff. As you're seeing, all of this stuff is fostering a story that you have to sell to the MBA, and really why that particular MBA, whether it's Oxford or Cambridge, is crucial for you to develop your next career goals. And that's the biggest thing. How is everything you're doing contributing to you getting your MBA, and how is that MBA going to contribute to ultimately your end goal? So if you can touch on that during this application process and the prepping, that's most important. The second part is the application. I'm gonna put my stats here for y'all to see what my personal application kind of looked like, really getting into my GMAT scores, my work experiences, stuff like that. As I mentioned previously, the GMAT is one of the first things they ask. What is your GMAT score? And you have to send them those things. So if you are interested in going to Cambridge and Oxford, make sure whenever you take the GMAT through MBA.com that you're putting those school codes so that you can send them for free, because I think you're able to send 5 schools for free. Me, unfortunately, I originally was not thinking I would go to Europe way back 2 years ago when I took the GMAT, so I didn't put those schools, so I had to pay extra for it, unfortunately, but it is what it is. The next thing is your resume. Make sure you have an up-to-date resume, of course. 1 page. If I remember Oxford, they gave you a template to use for your resume, and I think Cambridge did as well, but I remember Oxford, they wanted a specific template for you to put your resume in. I did not do that. I was very confident about my resume. I worked in business, was a business teacher before I joined the Marine Corps. I was like, listen, I know what my resume looks like. It looks good. I submitted it. Nobody ever said anything. I got accepted to both schools. So I would not recommend that. Make sure you use the template if you're unsure. Make sure it's translated correctly into English if English is not your first language, and make sure it's strong. And again, that story that I'm talking about, how do all those experiences align to your story of getting your MBA? The next thing is the essays, and the essay, besides the GMAT score, is the most important part. For Oxford, I think there were 3 essays. For Cambridge, I remember 2. And the essays are going to touch on how does this MBA influence your next career goals and your aspirations. You have to touch on that. And if you've already developed your story during the prepping process and then getting into the application process, that should be pretty easy. Don't fall into the habit of trying to look like you're making an impact your entire career. That's something that the interviewers and people that work inside Cambridge and Oxford, they always say that's the trap people fall into. They want to act like how are they special? How are they unique? Everybody's unique. Just show, if you're applying for these schools, you're probably already a very special type of individual. So you don't have to change yourself or to create lies, but exaggerating the truth in order to show how special you are. Just say how it is, what you want for your MBA, and really just sell that story. Put some emotion into it, and then that's going to sell itself, okay? So don't try to add things to show an impact, because it never works, and you're going to do more harm. And then recommendation letters. Cambridge, I only had to submit 1 recommendation letter, 1 person. You have to write a professional email in there. It can't be a Gmail account, Yahoo, whatever. It has to be from some type of company or something like that. I sent it to a former CEO of mine. For Cambridge, I think I had to do 2 at least, 1 professional and 1 academic. I used the same guy for my professional, and then I used a former professor, the same dude who inspired me to get my MBA whenever I worked in education. So very important. You're not really going to know what they're going to say because you're sending them an email. Just follow up with these people. Make sure they submit it, because they have to submit those letters of recommendation before the round that you're applying in. And then lastly, the biggest part of the application process, at least for most of us, is scholarships. In the application process, that's when you're going to choose all the scholarships that you want. And for most people, you know, they're going to give you a big list and you're going to read through them, and then you're going to have to click the ones that apply for you. Some you already automatically are eligible for, like bursary scholarships and stuff like that, but then others you have to indicate that, hey, these are scholarships that I would like to attempt to get. So an entrepreneur scholarship, that was one for me, and a military scholarship, I did that for both Cambridge and Oxford. And then usually you have to write some type of letter or an essay to those individual scholarships, demonstrating how you are eligible for those scholarships and why you're deserving of that. So, you know, at the end of your application, you could have written up to 6, 7, sometimes 10 essays for one application just because you're applying to so many scholarships. But, you know, make sure you're not using ChatGPT or something crazy like that to write these essays. They will know. Just write your story. Make sure you have a story and your why and your purpose behind getting your MBA. And then whenever you're writing these essays, it should flow pretty easily. But if you want some advice on how I wrote my essays or how I did it, especially because I think for Oxford I had to write like 7 or 8 essays, I can obviously make a video about that, or just comment down and I'll respond. The third piece of the application process is probably the most stressful one, and that's the interview. So you applied, you had your story, and you had a pretty strong background, and guess what? You get invited to an interview. Now, Oxford, they invited me to an interview about 3 days after I submitted my application. And I was very excited, only to find out that it was an Oxford Kira interview. Kira interviews, Oxford and Cambridge both use them. It's an online interview. And how it works is they're going to send you a link. Nobody's going to be behind it. It's all automated. And they're going to give you time to practice some questions. Then you're going to have like 45 seconds to a minute and a half to respond to a random question that they're just going to throw at you. And you get one attempt to do it. You have to do it 3 times. So it's very stressful. So you dress up in like a suit or tie, or ladies, you know, a fancy dress, and you're responding to these questions on the fly. And however you talk, at the end of that minute and a half, it's going to cut it off and you can't go look back at your video. I remember for Oxford, I had not interviewed for something in like 5 years because I've been in the military. You just get promoted. Whether you're good or bad, you move up the rank. So I was a little nervous about my interview. I remember for the Oxford online assessment, I forget what the first question was, but I think it was like, hey, tell us about a time that you had to overcome a difficult situation. And I spoke about an experience I had while I was jumping out of a plane as a parachutist. And like halfway through the interview, I completely went blank. And I started babbling, just making up stuff. And it was awful. So bad that once it cut off, I was in mid-sentence and then the interview question cut off. And it was awful. And I was very embarrassed. But I regained my bearing, had 2 more interview questions, and I thought I did pretty good on the interview questions. But I was very nervous because I thought I just screwed up my application. About a week after that, I got invited to the in-person interview. I got shortlisted, which is really good. So if you're going through those Kira interview questions or you mess up on one of them, don't freak out. Try to at least do well on 2 of them. Don't mess up all 3, then maybe you won't get an interview. But if you mess up on one, don't let it bother you too much. Just regain your bearing and keep pushing on. I promise you, I screwed up on mine and I still got accepted. Cambridge, however, they didn't do a Kira interview. They actually did an in-person interview first. I'll talk about that in a second. For Cambridge, they did the Kira interview for the scholarships. And Cambridge invited me to apply for the Veterans Scholarship, a military scholarship. So I did that, the same sequence. I think it was 2 questions this time, and I did pretty well on it because I had done the Oxford one first. Whenever you get invited to the in-person interview, you're going to wonder, okay, what are they going to ask me? The best resource to use for understanding what interview questions there are is GMAT Club. Just Google GMAT Club. You can find the individual schools, and it's a big community of people, a huge forum of people who have already gone through it. Now, if you're applying through round 1, you may have to look at last year's interview questions and just hope that they didn't change. I applied round 2 for both Cambridge and Oxford, and so a few people, they already had the interview questions posted. So I just looked through all of those, and I had a pretty good idea. Usually in the interview questions, again, they're going to talk about that story. Why do you want to get your your MBA, why Oxford and Cambridge, and how does it develop you in order to achieve your goals? What are your career aspirations? Then they're going to ask you specific things about the curriculum. Another piece of advice, right before you interview, make sure you look up the curriculum. It's going to be posted on the website and it's going to talk about some of the classes. Right before I had my Oxford interview, I went on there and I looked up some of the electives that you could take. I wanted to work in education, so I saw there was something about education and multimedia management because I want to do some stuff in music and education. So I saw that that was an elective. I just wrote that down on a piece of paper that I had in front of me, and sure enough, in the interview, they asked, what electives are you excited about? Now, if I wouldn't have looked that up, like probably 99% of people, I would have just been saying, something that has to do with business because it's an MBA. But because I looked that up right before, I was able to talk about the specific class and what I wanted. And I think that was the big difference in my interview of what impressed them, that I knew a lot about the curriculum already. So I would say that use GMAT Club to understand some of the questions. On questions that are very particular, maybe have something written down right before just in case they ask that question. You're going to shine and you're definitely going to stand out from the rest of the people who are interviewing, because I doubt many people do that. Before the interview, they're going to ask you for a date and time. Most of us are not living in England who are going to this. I'm living in America, so it's like a 5-6 hour time difference depending on daylight savings times or not. I had to wake up at 5 a.m. in order to do my interview. I was tired. I woke up 30 minutes before, combed my hair, put on a suit, and then just sat there, and it was still dark outside. You're going to be stressed. It's your MBA and it's going to change your life. And if you get accepted into Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard, Stanford, these big business schools, you know that your life is going to change. You're going to make a lot of money and it's going to set you up for a strong foundation for the rest of your life. So of course you're going to be nervous. You just got to accept that. I have been through hundreds of interviews, but that interview was the one that made me the most nervous. The interviewers are extremely nice, at least they were in my experience. Very nice, very professional. They're going to ask you the questions. They're going to be strict. They're going to keep the conversation going along. But understand that if you've made it to the interview part, it's a pretty strong chance that you're going to get admitted. I think somebody said that once you get to the interview part, there's like a 70% chance that you're going to get accepted. So if they've offered you an interview, it's because your application is extremely strong. So be a little nervous. It's okay to be a little nervous because anxiety helps you perform a little bit better, but don't be scared, okay? It's just an interview. You made it this far, you're going to be fine. Now, the last part, getting the offer letter, the biggest day of your life. I remember I got my Oxford offer letter and my Cambridge offer letter about like 2 weeks apart. First, I got my Oxford offer letter. And admittedly, Oxford was the place I wanted to go to. Why? Because whenever I think of a strong English university, I've always thought of Oxford. Very trivial reason to want to attend to a school, but Oxford was where I was at. I visited both Oxford and Cambridge before, and I just love the way Oxford looked. I liked the history. I liked that there was a little town, the big town that was connected to Oxford, and that was really where I wanted to go. Cambridge, I loved Cambridge as well. I went there. I thought it was very beautiful, but Oxford was my first choice. I received my offer letter and I was extremely happy. There's nothing like getting that email and then going on the website and the virtual confetti burst in your face and you're like, wow, I'm an Oxford offeree. Cambridge, same deal. You get an email saying congratulations and it makes you very, very excited. After you get your offer letter, Cambridge and Oxford are different with this. Oxford will show you what scholarships that you were eligible for or got accepted for immediately after you get your offer. Cambridge, they take like a week or two. So I kind of messed up my application a little bit because originally I wanted to do the 1+1. Because of some military benefit stuff, I decided, hey, I'm going to change my mind and just do the Oxford MBA. What happened is because I chose to do the 1+1, they did not make a scholarship decision for me immediately like they did for other applicants. Because I decided to change my mind, whenever I told them that, they said, hey, we're now going to have to consider you for scholarships in a later round, which was round 3. Cambridge's rounds are a little bit behind Oxford's. So it just so happened by coincidence that I was going to find out how much money I was going to get from Oxford and how much money I was going to get from Cambridge the same day. But Oxford, they said I had to make my decision on that day, where Cambridge, they were giving me a little bit of time. So that day, I think it was like December 15th or something, was very important because that was the day I had to decide which school I was going to choose. Unfortunately, Oxford, they said they could not offer me any scholarships. And I wasn't sure if my military benefits, VRNE, was going to cover it. So I made the decision, okay, let me see what Cambridge gives me. Cambridge gave me a very big scholarship because I was a military veteran. And so my decision was Cambridge. I decided to go to Cambridge because they were offering me more money. Both schools are excellent. I enjoyed both schools. I will admit I wanted to go to Oxford more, but I was very happy that I got accepted into both, and the universe just led me towards Cambridge. So nothing to be ashamed about. If the worst decision in your life is choosing between Cambridge and Oxford, I would say that's a pretty good thing. So small little flex there. I'm very proud of myself. The biggest thing that I can give you as a closing is make sure you understand your story. Make sure you understand why you want to get your MBA and how it connects to your future goals. That's going to guide you through this whole process. It's going to give you confidence whenever you're prepping because you're going to have the motivation in order to do well for your GMAT and other things. It's going to give you the story that you're going to write in your essays, and it's going to give you a strong foundation for your application. And then whenever you're doing your interview, you can rest assured they're going to ask you that, and that's going to be the main question that the interviewers are asking you throughout the interview. Have that memorized. Have that emotion and that passion behind it, and just be someone who's very personable, because these people, they want to work with people who they like. They want to work with people who they feel like are going to change the world and are good and positive people. So the biggest advice I can give to anybody is make sure you have a story and make sure you believe in it with all your heart. I greatly appreciate you watching this video. If you have any questions on other aspects or you want me to make another video about this topic, please tell me in the comments. This YouTube channel is going to change a lot. I'm going to start posting a lot of my travels and a lot of the crazy experiences that are upcoming here in the summer. It's going to be very fun. If you have any questions, any comments, concerns, please leave them below. I'd appreciate it if you subscribe for more videos like this and more interesting details about what's upcoming in my life. Thank you for watching. I hope you all have a great day.